So one of the things that we learned when we studied history, right, is that at the beginning of an experimental and complex new technology, a little bit of vertical integration really helps with adoption. You can kind of think of like Apple's approach with the Apple II and the Macintosh in the early 80s. You know, if you've ever played RuneScape or Diablo 2 or World of Warcraft, you know that these are huge gray market and black market economies that just need to be put out into the open, right? Imagine like trying to buy a WoW character or sell a WoW character on eBay. This is not the final iteration of how selling in-game items will be. So we've seen with the rise of pixels, Ronin can now become home to games other than just Axie, right? So not just about one game, it's about the interconnectivity of all of these games merged together to help make the economy stronger. The feedback that we have received is that the Ronin wallet is the best and most user-friendly wallet for gamers in the entire industry. And I think the numbers suggest this. It's been downloaded over 10 million times. For me, I was so excited to turn my Charmander into a Charizard. And now we're finally bringing that sense of wonder and excitement to the NFT space. And it's that emotion that we can actually use to balance these in-game economies and make them more sustainable.
That was really good. I mean, that's so interesting. You guys are doing a lot. You know what? I want to go and read this Ronin piece now. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Decoded by Diverse. I'm your host, Dina Matar, and today we're going to be speaking with Jeff Jihoz Zirlin, the co-founder of Sky Mavis. So first of all, thank you so much for joining us on Decoded. It's a pleasure to have you and a real honor because, you know, Axie Infinity and Sky Mavis have been a really big part of Web3 and really revolutionary with the gaming side of Web3. So really excited to dive in with you.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for inviting me. Happy to be here.
So how I like to get this thing started is I like to hear about yourself, your background, like your personal background, and then just kind of like dive into how you got into how you built Sky Mavis and Axie Infinity.
Yeah, sure. Well, I've always been a gamer and a collector. So I grew up playing video games and collecting fossils. I'm half Korean, so that's, you know, part of being a Korean kid back in the day was playing video games. The first thing I ever did on the internet was play StarCraft. And my father loves insects and fossils. So I think from an early age, I got a sense of collecting things, collecting rare things, especially because that's kind of how I would impress him as a child.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I think like somehow I was always destined to be a part of the NFT scene because it felt like growing up that, okay, collecting things, video games didn't necessarily make it obvious what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. At one point, I wanted to be like a wildlife conservation biologist.
Okay.
And I, you know, wanted to be a hedge fund manager at another time, right? But it really felt like everything came together for me when I discovered NFTs, right? So I discovered NFTs via CryptoKitties. So I was one of the early generation. It's actually experimenting with the technology. That's actually where I met Trung and Alex, and they're Trung was the original founder of Axie Infinity, the guy who had the idea, like to do it. Him and Masamune, or his name is Tu. So, but I met Trung and Alexander playing CryptoKitties, right? And so I actually discovered Axie as a community member first, and I fell in love with it. Just like any, just like basically the millions of people after me have fallen in love with it. I was attracted to the art. I thought that NFTs at the time were limited because you couldn't fight them, and they weren't basically fun enough. And then I thought that something like Axie would have the potential to educate and introduce millions of people about crypto. So it's kind of like, you know, my background and how I got into it.
That's pretty cool. So your first kind of entry into Web3 was through the CryptoKitties?
Yeah, actually. So, you know, I had some of my high school friends had convinced me to buy some Ether in 2017. And then I was kind of keeping an eye on it, and that's how I found out about CryptoKitties, right? So the first thing, I was actually reading the ETH kind of news sites every day, and the first thing that I found interesting, I guess, was CryptoKitties, and that's really what onboarded me. And
That's quite interesting.
I actually knew and believed in Bitcoin though since 2011 or something like that. But yeah, for some reason I never bought any. I just never bought any. It was complicated. I think I kind of believed in. I believed that like real estate, Bitcoin, and stocks would go parabolic, and government bonds would go down. That was kind of like what I wrote my high school thesis on, or my college thesis on. So.
Oh, that's quite interesting. I'm sure that would be worth something now to take a look. I'm sure maybe many of your points, maybe your hypotheses were proven.
Yeah, and actually, we put that in the Axie white paper. So it's actually easy to find
Oh,
my college thesis.
what you guys have built with Sky Mavis is really interesting and it's super impressive. So can you tell us a little bit about the ecosystem of Sky Mavis and Axie? Because I know like some people kind of just say, oh, Sky Mavis is only Axie Infinity. So for those listeners as well, can you maybe expand a little bit about some of your other products in the ecosystem?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so we started out building Axie, and Axie has really accomplished amazing things, right? It's in the Guinness Book of World Records is the #1 NFT project by all-time trading volume. It's literally onboarded millions of people to crypto.
Mhm.
And there's still, in 2023, 661,000 unique accounts actually played Axie. And so it's still the #1 Web3 gaming IP. But
Mhm.
along the way, right, like we were building since 2018, we encountered a lot of roadblocks while trying to build a Web3 game. Scalability, user experience, right? Wallets kind of sucked, and the marketplaces sucked. Ethereum was not built for a lot of small transactions. So along the way, we basically built Ronin. Ronin is our EVM scaling solution for Web3 gaming. And it's the #1 gaming chain by basically any metric that you could track. So there are over 2 million monthly active addresses interacting with the Ronin chain. The Ronin wallet has
Wow.
been downloaded more than 10 million times. And
Wow.
so now Ronin is showing that we're about more than just Axie. The talk of the town now is Pixels, right? So Pixels has burst onto the scene. It was on Polygon and it had 5,000 daily active users. It was the #1 game on Polygon. We're like, yo, that sounds good. That seems good. Well, let's see what they could do with an actual community. So we migrated Pixels over, right? And all their metrics skyrocketed. And so I think that also shows the power of our technology, and also I think more importantly, or more easily demonstrates the power of our community, right? Because this was
Yeah.
a project that had a lot of potential, but it was being basically suppressed. It was like holding a balloon underwater by not being on Ronin, right? And when they came onto Ronin, they were actually able to fulfill their destiny.
I did see that it was named the best blockchain for gaming. So congratulations. You guys have pretty an outstanding community. What's your vision now for Ronin?
Ronin will be the king of the gaming chains. It will be the #1 place to build, grow, and monetize a Web3 game. And I think all the data and recent success demonstrates that. We really want to be like very user centric and to basically focus on having an amazing user experience. We have a little bit more of a vertically integrated approach than other chains, right? We're
Yeah.
basically right the marketplace, the wallet, the game launcher. All of these basically create this seamless ecosystem that makes it really simple to onboard users, right? They're kind of familiar with the Ronin brand. We put a lot of effort into making sure that our products just work, and yeah, I think it's been really successful, right? So I think the main differentiator when we look at it is we are the only people that have actually onboarded millions of people to Web3, right? Like that's not just a buzzword. That's not just something on our website that we made up. That's actually true. That's history. That's something that's in the history books. That's something that's in the Guinness Book of World Records. And because we have this community that's been with us thinking about Web3 gaming for years and years, some of them 5 years, right? That's a ton of human capital.
Yeah.
And that's actually what people are missing. That's actually what's missing from the industry, right? We actually have a lot of traders. We have a lot of investors. The media actually really cares about crypto and thinks that it's interesting or controversial, right? It's at least newsworthy. What
Yeah.
does crypto actually need? We actually need users. We need gamers. And that's actually what we have by onboarding millions via Axie. And then now these gamers are like, hey, we love this idea. We can't go back to playing normal games. Show us other games. We want other genres of games. We want other IPs, right? So we're becoming this Web3 Nintendo by leveraging the fact that we actually have this audience, this really passionate community. And the community loves Ronin. They're also the owners of the Ronin chain, right? So Ronin is basically the first gaming infrastructure that's owned by the community that uses it. And that also just, right, like doubles down and strengthens this network effect.
Yeah, I was going to ask, because I know you guys from Axie Infinity, you guys have been through quite a journey from, from launching up to date. And you've had to adapt quite a lot over the past few years. And can you tell us about how the Axie Infinity community evolved? Obviously, we know that they played a very significant role in shaping your ecosystem, but can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, so it's been a 6-year journey. We're about to basically Axie is 6 years old now. And we're still working on it. And so in the early days, we had a very small community. It was early kind of hobbyists, NFT, people who were like trying to experiment with the technology. Many of them had come from the CryptoKitties community. Some came from things like Decentraland. A high number of geniuses in the early community, kind of quirky, kind of like quirky, not too mentally stable geniuses. And that was kind of like the kind of the archetype of the early Axie community member. That's I think like how early technologies are typically adopted. And over time, right, like we would basically manually onboard people, right? So we would like give out free Axies to people that we thought would be a good fit for the community. And we just, right, like kept rolling that snowball, improving the game, right? So we went from like having a very simple auto battler to a more complex real-time card game, right? So also like continuously upgrading the infrastructure, the core game, right? This goes from like 2018 to 2019 to 2020. 2020 and 2021, things really started to escalate. People started to get more interested in NFTs. And we basically were able to combine global permissionless finance with a game, right? Like we had basically smooth love potions that were listed on Uniswap. People could earn those potions by playing the game. And soon we were starting to onboard people in places that need crypto the most, in places where the traditional banking infrastructure doesn't reach, right? Places like the Philippines, places like Argentina, Venezuela. And that became a phenomenon. What do we need? We need to get this technology into the hands of everyday people. We need to make it tangible, and we need to provide benefits, right? So that was a big turning point. And so we were able to, right, really flourish during the bull market, onboard millions of people. Obviously, then boom, we onboarded tons of people, and then a devastating, crazy bear market hit the industry, right? But to me, that's like boot camp, right? Like we're going through this training, this really intense training and mental growth process with hundreds of thousands of people. And with Axie, they've gone through crazy amounts of glory and success, and also like the lowest of lows. And that has basically created this community of missionaries, people who are very mentally resilient, people who are willing to basically go above and beyond for this amazing movement. And now, right, like the strength of that Axie community is now being channeled into things like the Ronin ecosystem, right? And that's this energy that is able to attract and grow all of the different gaming partners, especially the really good ones that we're able to bring onto the Ronin platform.
How do these products all contribute to the overall growth and sustainability of Sky Mavis ecosystem? Because the way I'm thinking it is it's like Sky Mavis, and then you have your Axie Infinity, Ronin.
Sky Mavis's goal is to bring economic freedom to everyone, starting with gamers, right? So that's really what we're focused on, right? Some companies are profit motivated. Some companies are product motivated. But I mean,
Yeah.
that's our mission, right? That's our mission, is to onboard and bring economic freedom to everyone, starting with gamers, right? So that's really what we optimize for. Is like, how can we onboard the largest number of gamers? And I think the value accrual and sustainability, right? All of that flows naturally from pursuing that outcome, right? Because okay, like when you think about sustainability, there were some issues with play to earn, right? So for example, okay, like how do we scale that? How do we iterate on that model to make it better? Okay, well, one of the things was that you actually cannot upgrade and evolve your axes.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, like yeah, people would probably pay tokens, thereby making the ecosystem sustainable, to upgrade and evolve, to make their axes more powerful and more beautiful, right? So that was actually something that we delivered at the end of last year, and early indications are that that's really helping to balance the economy, right? SLP is now super deflationary. The Axie population itself is actually deflationary, right? So we've now been able to introduce that, and that was like the big thing. That was the hole in the ship, right? Was inflation, right? It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
you can give out tokens, but eventually there are going to be too many of them, right? Oh, you can let people breed Axies, but eventually there's going to be too many of them relative to demand, right? So we've been able to, right, like basically fix some of these issues, but of course, right, like the end thing that we're optimizing for is, right, onboarding and bringing economic freedom to people, and that naturally, right, like when you have that as a north star, it helps you to basically iterate on things like value accrual and sustainability.
I mean, I know that there's a couple of gaming guilds that actually used to just farm Axies and give them out to their community to play with, and try to, like, kickstart other, like, I guess, economic freedom for other gamers in Indonesia and also in the Philippines. So I think that it's quite inspiring also to know that, Axie Infinity inspired other people to create businesses basically based around that. And then obviously when everything went down with the market crashing and you guys had to kind of adapt, with which you did, you kind of found that, oh, now these businesses didn't really have much of a core focus anymore. So they had to start adapting and try to build new arms to the business to keep that community. And I find that a lot of them end up losing the community when really their initial, they didn't have, they were just really focused on that kind of one path. What do you think is like a big challenge for projects, and where do you think they lack? And this is mainly, I'd say, specifically in gaming and Web3, because it is coming back now.
Yeah, first I also want to say, right, like that an interesting thing that we're seeing is that the guilds are coming back. YGG,
Yeah.
if you click on YGG, right, like I was just with them in the Philippines, like the scholars are returning, and that's actually one of our big initiatives or kind of goals this year, right, is to revive or re-amplify the scholars system. Their scholars are coming back. And I kind of see scholars as, it's another form. You can think of it as like Bitcoin mining, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bitcoin mining is actually unprofitable during the bear market. It's only miners actually usually run at a loss, right? But then they're able to make that up during the
bull
happening,
run.
the year
Yeah.
after the happening, right? So I think like these, while the industry remains immature, I believe that right, it will be kind of like that. Maybe for the first 10 or 15 years of the industry. This is going to be a 1,000-year industry, right? So maybe for the first 10 or 15 years, it'll be kind of cyclical, and the guilds will, be thriving mainly during the bull and having to find ways to survive and specialize and increase operational efficiency during the bear. That's probably how things will go. But I've been really excited to see the guild scene getting stronger, and we're actually looking at building tools, right, like delegation or NFT lending tools to make it much easier to run those types of programs this cycle. So
No, go on.
So to go to your question about like what do I see as missing, I mean, I think really what other projects are missing is this battle hardened, large, substantial community, and that actually knows how to use the technology and actually knows how to onboard people, right? And you can think of it. I think we think of our community, right, as this amazing force for building with us, onboarding with us, amplifying everything that we're all collectively doing together, and it's like a network effect, right? So um, it's it's something where each user, each player is so important. It's like one player now might be worth 100 in 5 to 10 years, right? Because what happens at the birth of an industry is really, really important for how like the end state uh, kind of settles. So I think what other projects are missing is actual adoption. Why are they missing actual adoption? Well, to be honest, I think it's because they started too late. Actually, most of the projects that if they kept started building in 2018, 2017, and would have kept going, right? They would probably be doing well, right? So most of actually being an entrepreneur is timing, being early to the right market and never giving up. So yeah, so other projects, right? They're either not early to the market or they gave up. Those, from a first principles or like a very basics level, that's kind of how I see, why others aren't more successful in Web3 gaming. I think like, that the way that is interpreted or output to the world is right. Like you either have a lack of an understanding of Web3 mechanics or a lack of understanding of how to build a great game or a lack of understanding of how to basically live operate a game economy and a community, right? Those are kind of like maybe the three pillars, right? It's like have to be great at managing the community and the economy, have to be great at building a game, and yeah, have to also understand, right, like the Web3 mechanics and how to build with the infrastructure, how to smoothly integrate and have a good user experience.
Yeah. You mentioned that you think that this will be 1,000-year industry, right? So can you speak a little bit on that? Because a lot of people are like, oh, I don't see this going past, maybe the next 20, 30 years. So this is now for those listeners who don't really believe in Web3.
We're always seeing evolution of economic processes towards systems that are more open, that are more resilient, that have more freedom baked into them, right? It's almost like competition. So if you've ever like tried to transfer money using a bank, and then also transferred money like using Ethereum, then I think you should understand, right? Like there are certain actions that you can perform when you start to lose confidence in this industry that will basically reinvigorate your confidence. Sending money using like the Swift system, for example, is one of them. Go into a bank, right? So to me, it's just very clear that all the financial infrastructure as it presently exists will be disrupted. When thinking about like gaming specifically, if you've ever played RuneScape or Diablo 2 or World of Warcraft, you know that these are huge gray market and black market economies that just need to be put out into the open, right? So to me, it was always very apparent why this creates a good and or better user experience, because I was a kid who I was making money playing video games. Sometimes I would get scammed or I would have to meet people in person. Imagine like trying to buy a WoW character or sell a WoW character on eBay. This is not the final iteration of how selling in-game items will be. We're blessed, right, to have these experiences where maybe not everyone has enough money to have a bank account to send like to use the Swift system. Not everyone grew up playing video games like Diablo and RuneScape and World of Warcraft to give them this understanding of the problem that's actually being solved.
What are some key lessons you've learned along the way, especially with the rapidly evolving, blockchain and gaming space?
A lot of our lessons are mirrored in our Sky Mavis's values. So one of our values is iteration, right? And it's like there is no playbook in this industry. We have to move fast. We have to experiment.
Sure.
Not everything is going to work, but we have to have like a high velocity of shipping. So I think that's one of the things that if you talk to our community, it's like Sky Mavis is always relentlessly shipping. And we have over 200 employees, right? And that's actually one of our advantages. And, we're constantly putting out product. Not all of these things work, but we're always looking to improve what we've built. And always, right, we actually have real users to basically identify user issues or problems for us that we can then address through product enhancements or new product lines. And so I would say that, yeah, just iteration. I would say like resilience, right? Like never giving up, right? Like there were so many times where Sky Mavis should have and could have died.
Yeah.
Some of them were public. Some of them were more private, right? Like in the first year, 2018, we stopped paying ourselves. After ETH went from $500 to $80 or something, right, or $100. We had raised, right? We had done our initial mint of Axie or of the original Axies for ETH, and we held ETH like crypto news. We went through that process and we almost died. But we just refused, right? So I really think that resilience is an underrated attribute for entrepreneurs. You really have to burn the boats. You cannot like be like, oh, I'll just go back to my normal life. I'll just go back to my job. I'll just start another company. These are not acceptable options for if you want to be successful. You cannot even have that in the back of your head. Like that's the only option. So I think that resilience is super key. Iteration is really key. Making agreements. So a lot of times founders or people will like say, yeah, NFTs, communities, I would never wish that on anyone, right? Like you have all these holders and speculators that are getting super angry at you and expecting more utility, more earning, etc.
Yeah.
Right? So those are expectations. So like what I've learned is that you need to be very careful of having expectations and to make agreements when possible. And if you cannot make an agreement about something, you can just be very clear about your stance, so that the people who have those unfair or impossible expectations, they can just pack up and leave. And because right, it's like a community is also like a bunch of bananas, right? Like one rotten banana will basically spoil, right? So it's actually good to kick people out or encourage them to leave
Yeah.
so that they don't basically spoil everyone else's mood.
Yeah. No, I mean that's a very good point, because I think that's a lot of communities have that, right? The people who are I'd say the rotten banana in the community. So, and they always have to make a scene on their exit. But you also mentioned obviously with with Web3 specifically, you can't exactly, if you're going down, you can't exactly leave and start something else, because this industry will never forget you. I mean, this is something that you're either successful or you're not, and that's it. Like you don't get a second chance, I feel, in this industry.
I can't think of too many examples, right, where people have pivoted, but I mean, it's possible, but that's not how we were perceiving it, right? It was always just, right, like we're going. That's almost why like you have to be a little bit arrogant, right? You have to say we are going to do this. We're going to be number one, because then you're making an agreement with the world, and you basically that agreement that you've made will push you to keep going, even when it's painful.
That's true.
So we've seen with the rise of pixels, Ronin can now become home to games other than just Axie, right? So looking to also selectively onboard games that can really, really deliver amazing experiences and value for our community. And so, yeah, I think right, like people have a lot of hype and excitement about the different games that will be onboarded to Ronin, because now it's like, right, the Ronin stamp of approval, right? We're calling it the Ronin effect. Can be quite dramatic. So I think, we're really excited about bringing on amazing new gaming partners.
So for new gaming projects specifically, also because like we're working with a lot of games ourselves. So, and Ronin's been a really like a hot topic for everyone, trying to see like, oh, maybe we can, build on Ronin. So can you tell us a little bit about that process and how that works? Like for someone, let's say there's someone who's watching this and is considering or wants to build on Ronin.
Yeah, I mean, so there is actually an application or a way to raise your flag and say, hey, I want to build on Ronin. You can do that straight from roninchain.com. There'll be a button like apply to build on Ronin, right? So that's one way. Right? Obviously, the best way is to get an introduction to me or Kathleen or one of the founders with a warm kind of recommendation, right? Because I think the thing that's a little bit different about Ronin right now is we are pretty selective who we choose to build with. Of course, this will like get more lenient over time, just as it has with Nintendo, just as it has with um, different game publishers over time. But right now, right, like we only have a certain amount of time. We only have a certain number of community members, right? So we want to make sure that we're basically working with the teams that will have the best chance of success. So yeah, that's kind of right. Like that's when we have that Ronin stamp of approval. That's also what creates the Ronin effect.
Yeah.
But we haven't really had that curator. You actually haven't really had that curator or curatorial aspect in Web3 gaming yet, where basically, right, like you have someone helping and really actually being able to introduce and warmly recommend gaming products to a certain audience, right?
Is there anything else that you would like people to know about Sky Mavis or Axie Infinity or the Ronin sidechain?
There's a lot to keep up with, right? Like the number one thing that we hear from our community is, hey, like it's impossible for us who look at this stuff day in and day out to keep up with everything that's shipping and happening on the Ronin network and the Axie ecosystem. And so I highly recommend actually checking out the Ronin year in review as well as the Axie year in review. So hopefully you guys can like maybe link to that in the comments or something like that. But that will, I think, give a really great overview of what we actually did in 2023 and how that sets us up to win in 2024. Another thing that I would totally recommend is like our community is the most welcoming community that I've ever been a part of. Come to the Axie Discord, the Ronin Discord, and say, hey, like I'm new here. I need help. You will basically receive, you'll make new friends. And I really think that's like the best way to encounter and kind of join the community at the beginning, right? You can do that on Twitter as well. But our community is so welcoming. Probably you'll get some free Axies, maybe some free NFTs. Basically like a kind of a very, very hands-on onboarding process via the community.
That's really good. I mean, that's something I think that would add a lot of value to really anyone new to crypto specifically also.
The feedback that we have received is that the Ronin wallet is the best and most user-friendly wallet for gamers in the entire industry. And I think the numbers suggest this. It's been downloaded over 10 million times. We also have worked really closely with exchanges. And because of how popular Axie is, we've been able to leverage that success to get a bunch of exchange integrations, right? So one of the user pain points that doesn't work for scaling solutions is oftentimes you'll have to like basically, right, like you can buy ETH, and then in order to get it onto the scaling solution, you have to send it to ETH mainnet and then like use a bridge to get it onto the scaling solution. Whereas we have integrations with exchanges like Binance, gamers can transfer their crypto directly from Binance to the Ronin chain. That's actually like a huge onboarding advantage for Ronin compared to like a lot of these other newer, less proven gaming solutions.
So is that the integration with the exchanges, is that on the wallet or on the marketplace?
It's actually like basically at the protocol level, right? So basically, right, like
Wow.
where Binance has their own Ronin addresses that are then mapped to basically exchange addresses or accounts, right?
Okay.
But yeah, you can think of it as kind of like a wallet integration from a user perspective. Yeah.
So what you guys are now building is basically like almost like an all-in-one, like almost a one-stop shop. So you have your marketplace, your wallet, and the overall ecosystem, including the chain, all basically all within one ecosystem. So this basically for new games or Web3 games who want to build can essentially just basically build out their MVP and then say, we want to put this and just basically integrate it within this entire ecosystem.
So one of the things that we learned when we studied history, right, is that at the beginning of an experimental and complex new technology, a little bit of vertical integration really helps with adoption, right? Because
Yeah.
the users don't really know enough yet to kind of figure things out themselves. So you want to kind of vertically integrate and heavily guide them through the process and make things kind of seamlessly flow together, right? You can kind of think of like Apple's approach with the Apple II and the Macintosh in the early 80s, why that was so important at the beginning of the personal computing revolution, right? It's actually really important when you're introducing new products to have this more integrated approach versus the end game of these industries actually like tend to be a little bit more open, right? It's kind of so
Mhm.
that kind of mirrors like our ability to or our goal to right like be a little bit more integrated at the beginning,
Right.
and then to gradually like open up over time.
I think this is a very progressive way of thinking about it now as well. So for let's say for Web3 games, because you guys are basically you've built out everything. You have the community. You have the chain. You now have the wallet and all of these like different components that basically new projects that are building out would need to integrate. When they come on board, are they also integrated? Obviously, I'm sure they're integrated also within the community, right? So are you guys also soon, I don't know if this is maybe a bit too far-fetched, but are you going to also maybe be supporting them with building out their games? Is that something that you guys are looking into?
Well, we of course we have a lot of experience building games and a lot of
Yeah.
experience building Web3 games, so we do right provide them advice. But to be honest, right, like it's not sustainable or scalable for us to be doing like the majority of the work there, right? So
Right.
we do have to, we, these teams that we're onboarding, like we typically like to have for them to have good game design chops. We can help out a bit on the community and the Web3 economics. Of course, we can help out, right, like by testing the game and giving feedback. But if you're not good at building and designing games, then
Yeah.
that's not
Then
that's kind of like
get out
not
of town.
the reason, right? The reason that we have to be so selective is we're looking for unicorns, right? It's like these
Yeah.
people who know how to build a game, who know how to manage community, who know a lot about Web3 and Web3 mechanics, right? There's a pretty
Yeah.
like small, right? You're really like most teams can get eliminated or dinged on one of those pillars, right?
How intense is your process when you guys are vetting these games and doing your due diligence? Like, what stage would they actually need to be at for you to start vetting them? Because we speak to people who are still building. What stage do they need to be at in order to be able to actually approach you and then come and say, "This is what we have"?
Well, first, we're open to talking to everyone, and especially teams that right they might be early, but they have a really great background, a really great concept, something concrete to go off of. Right, definitely willing to talk to them. Teams that have been around, have been shipping, have a bit of a core community, are putting up some decent metrics, but just need right like maybe a bit of a growth catalyst or a warm introduction to our community.
Yeah.
That seems to be like the low hanging fruit, right? That's what Pixels has done, right? Pixels has been building for 2 years. They're putting up good stats on Polygon, right? You kind of think of it as like, oh, we're like the Ronin is like the major leagues, right? Like, and we're looking for minor leaguers that are putting up good stats to then promote into the big leagues, right? So to have more data and to have a bit of a data set and to have some concrete proof of shipping and resilience, that's super helpful when we're making these decisions.
What do you think of the Web3 gaming landscape right now? Like, because obviously I'm sure you're obviously well aware of, games are launching almost on a weekly basis at this point.
Yeah, like where were these games in the bear market? Like, to me, I'm like interested in like what are the games that were shipping, that were super resilient, that were around when things weren't great. So I would say that from our perspective, from player perspective, right, have to be a little bit careful about teams that are kind of just jumping on the hype. That said, right, like there will also be teams that are putting out quality product this cycle, but definitely be careful because, right, like as the economic environment, it's kind of like we have this issue with crypto where, right, like as the market improves, our morals right, get worse, right? So
Yeah.
I think there's something where we have to maintain integrity, and I think that's why, right, like having a motive beyond money is more focused on education and onboarding. I think that serves as a good moral compass for our community. Of course, right? There are outliers, and but yeah, I would say that there. Right now, if you look at the data, the objective data, where are the games that actually have players and people who aren't Web3 native, right? This is on the Ronin network. This is in the Ronin ecosystem, and I'm yet to seen another ecosystem actually onboard everyday people to Web3 and to put up the types of numbers that we're putting up on the Ronin network. So my estimation is that between 60 to 70% of all Web3 gamers are Ronin gamers. And one of the things that I want to do this year is to work on like some data, right? Source of truth for, okay, where are the gamers in Web3? Because there is no kind of like one place to objectively measure that is open for people to verify and see right now.
I think that'll be very interesting data just to have a look and see where everyone is.
We're the only ones who have the incentive to surface this, right? So we don't have no one else to do it.
What new innovations do you guys have coming out with Axie?
Yeah, so we actually just shipped something that we see as really important, not just for Axie, but for the entire Web3 gaming space. It's called Axie Evolution. So basically, Axies are now dynamic NFTs that evolve. They get stronger, they get more beautiful as you play with them. And when we think back to last cycle, what was the issue? What was the hole in the ship? It was that basically there was nothing to do with all that the axes that were like overpopulating, and the basically like over inflation of different tokens, right? But now we have a system where you burn axes to get crafting materials that you then combine with tokens to upgrade the appearance and the power level of your favorite axes, right? So this is a system of like vertical progression that we think is going to be super, super important for not just Axie, but the entire space, right? When we think back to our childhood, we might remember experiences like Pokemon, right? And why did you fall in love with your first Pokemon? It was because you wanted to level them up, right? For your starter Pokemon, you wanted it to hit level 18 and 36 so that it could get to the different evolutions, right? Me, I was so excited to turn my Charmander into a Charizard. And now we're finally bringing that sense of wonder and excitement to the NFT space. And it's that emotion that we can actually use to balance these in-game economies and make them more sustainable. Something that we've been working on for 6 years, right? That was actually something that really attracted me to Axie, right? It was like, yo, an NFT that is like living and breathing and evolving, like that seems really interesting, right? But right now we still have this perception of NFTs as like static images, right?
Yeah.
That's probably why more people don't find them interesting. But I think that as NFTs get literally more dynamic, things that can evolve, people are going to really understand why they're awesome. So right now we are basically like, the cool thing is, in order to evolve your Axie, you need to earn enough experience points to even be eligible, right, for spending those resources to evolve it. And the crazy thing is there are a bunch of Axie games right now, right? There are dozens of Axie games that are live, and you can play a bunch of these different games to get experience points to level up your Axie. So we now have community members that are playing like 5+ different Axie titles on a daily basis to get experience points so that they can evolve their Axie. So it's kind of like if you played Neopets, right? Like there were kind of daily routines that you would perform to maximize like the Neo points that you were getting. And we're kind of starting to see that type of a vibe emerge in the Axie ecosystem, where it's not just about one game. It's about the interconnectivity of all of these games merged together to help make the economy stronger.
Wow. Then what would come next then for that that evolution.
Making sure that the utility of those evolutions is interpreted in really interesting ways in the different games, right? So it's like,
Mhm.
yeah, I might have the level 2 eyes or the level 2 horns, but if there are many different Axie games, right? What do those evolutions actually confer as benefits in these games beyond just they look more beautiful or they look better, right? So it's kind
Yeah.
of up to the different game designers of the different games to work together to basically add power and utility to
Mhm.
these evolution, integrating axes and the experience points and the level and the progression systems into these all these different games, and then figuring out how they can complement each other, right? Because I think that's where you start to get into like ideas around like interoperability, which is so far for the space been like a buzzword or something that hasn't
Yeah.
really come to fruition, right? But I think like what's interesting is when you have a bunch of interconnected experiences where they're coordinating together, building together, and working towards shared goals of like creating more immersive experiences and creating a new type of digital collectible that helps to basically create a stronger economy, which then benefits, right, everyone involved in the ecosystem.
Maybe one last message for the gamers. If you have any thoughts on, the gamers who still don't really buy into the Web3, play to earn.
The risk of just trying it out is very low, right? So what I would recommend is to try out the technology, use the technology, try out a Web3 infused game, and see if you like it. There are now ways to basically get involved for zero cost. And so I would learn about it. Like I would definitely try to experience it first before formulating your own opinion. So I really believe that if you actually play one of these games, actually experience the joy of owning an NFT, breeding an NFT, selling an NFT, gifting an NFT to someone, right? If you do these things and talk to the people that you're interacting with, there's a really good chance that you will understand the technology in the way that, right, trying to think about it from philosophical perspective or just listening to what other people say on the internet. I really highly advise like making your own opinion after using the product. It's on us, right? Of course, to make the products more appealing and easier to use from a first time user perspective.
Those were very good closing thoughts. Thank you so much, Jeffrey. It was a great pleasure to have you. And then for everyone who wants to, try out the game, check out Ronin sidechain and the Sky Mavis ecosystem. Even the year in reviews, the links will be in the description below. So that is all. Hey everyone, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, what I hate to say, but I know I have to, please like, comment, and subscribe. Okay. Arrivederci. Maselema. Do svidania. Ciao. I'm done.